The wind was strange here. It carried no scent of life, yet Kane felt as if unseen eyes were watching from every shadow. The sky above was a pale silver, with heavy clouds swirling like slow whirlpools. His boots crunched against the dark, cracked soil as he stepped out from the ramp of his small landing craft. He was alone. Or at least, he thought he was. His mission was simple, that's what the briefing had said. A strange signal had been detected on this uncharted planet. His orders were to land, locate the source, and report back. No one had told him why the signal was pulsing like a heartbeat, or why the frequency felt almost alive when he listened. To it through the ship's comm, as Kane moved forward. The ground trembled softly beneath his feet, like the planet itself was breathing. The feeling was wrong, unsettling. He kept one hand near the sidearm on his belt. Then it happened. A voice clear, cold, and smooth spoke from somewhere ahead. "Human, you stand where no outsider has stood for 1,000 cycles." Kane froze. His heart jumped. The voice wasn't coming from his comm. It was coming from the air itself. Slowly, a tall figure emerged from the mist between two jagged rock formations. She was armored head to toe in plates of black metal that shimmered faintly with green light. The helmet covered her entire face, except for two piercing eyes, glowing like molten emeralds. She moved with slow, controlled steps, like a predator deciding if its prey was worth the effort. "You came here chasing a signal," she said. "But you will not leave unless you prove yourself worthy." Kane's grip on his sidearm tightened. "And if I refuse?" Her head tilted slightly. "Then you will not leave at all." The silence stretched. The wind hissed between the rocks. Kane's pulse quickened, but he forced himself to stay calm. "You will face my trials," she continued. 3 tests. You pass. You live. You fail. You join the bones beneath this soil. Kane didn't see any bones, but he didn't doubt she was telling the truth. He had been in enough war zones to know when someone's threat was not just words. Still, he tried to understand. "Why test me? Why not kill me now and be done with it?" Her gaze didn't waver. "Because, once, long ago, I thought your kind were nothing but destroyers. I still believe that. But there is a chance, a very small chance. I am wrong." Kane took a breath. He didn't know what she was, what her people had been through, or why she was here alone. But he could tell she believed in her tests. "Fine," he said at last. "I'll play your game." Her eyes glowed brighter. "Good. Then your first trial begins now." She raised one gauntlet hand and slammed it into the ground. The soil cracked, and a long, thin bridge of crystal erupted from the earth, stretching over a deep, dark chasm. The edges of the bridge were jagged and narrow, glimmering faintly under the strange silver sky. "You will cross," she said simply. Kane stepped closer, looking down into the chasm. The depth was impossible to measure, just an endless darkness, with faint, shifting movements below. Like something alive was swimming far beneath the surface. He started forward, each step making the crystal groan under his weight. The wind picked up, cold and sharp, tugging at his jacket. Halfway across, he heard a small sound like a cry. Kane turned his head. Near the far side of the bridge, clinging to one of the sharp edges, was a tiny creature. It looked fragile, its body trembling as the wind tried to pull it into the abyss. He glanced back at the armored woman. She stood still, watching, her arms crossed. Kane could have ignored it. Saving the creature meant risking his own life, but he didn't think about it long. He crouched, edging toward it carefully. The bridge swayed, the crystal groaning under the shift in weight. With one quick movement, he scooped the creature into his arm and kept moving. The wind roared harder now, as if the planet itself was trying to throw him into the abyss. His boots scraped along the sharp surface. For one terrifying moment, the crystal beneath his foot cracked in, he nearly fell. But Kane pushed forward, step by step, until he reached the far side. The moment his boots touched solid ground, the bridge shattered behind him, falling into the darkness below with a sound like distant thunder. The armored woman looked down at the small creature in his arm. For the first time, her voice softened. Slightly. "You saved it." Kane shrugged, still catching his breath. "It was there. I could help. So I did." She stared at him for a moment longer, then turned away. "Your first trial is complete, human, to remain. Do not think the next will be so simple." Kane exhaled slowly. He knew this was only the beginning. The air grew heavier as Kane followed the armored woman deeper into the alien landscape. The ground changed from cracked black stone to strange, living vines that pulsed faintly under his boots. A dim, greenish mist swirled between twisted pillars of rock. The sound of the wind was gone here, replaced by a faint hum, low, steady, and unsettling. She walked ahead without looking back. Kane kept his distance, but stayed close enough not to lose sight of her. The tiny creature he had saved in the first trial had slipped from his arms somewhere along the way, disappearing into the fog. He hoped it had found safety. Finally, she stopped. They stood before a massive wall of vines, their thick stems woven together like muscle and bone. The wall stretched upward into the mist, with no end in sight. "Your second trial," she said, her voice calm, but with an edge that made Kane tense. "You will enter. Inside, you will face what the vines choose to show you. You will find your way out, or you will be swallowed." Kane frowned. "And what exactly do these vines choose to show?" She tilted her head slightly. "The truth. Or your fear. Sometimes they are the same." Before Kane could reply, the vines began to twist and pull apart, forming a narrow opening just wide enough for him to step through. The mist inside glowed faintly, like light coming from underwater. Kane hesitated, then stepped inside. The vines closed behind him with a wet, organic sound. The air was warm and damp. Each step made the ground feel soft, almost spongy. Noticed something strange. The walls seemed to move when he looked away, curling and shifting like they were breathing. The hum grew louder. Shapes began to appear in the glowing mist. At first, they were just shadows. Then, slowly, they formed into people. He knew those faces. The first was his old squad leader, eyes hard and disappointed. Kane's chest tightened. This was the man who had once told him he was too reckless, too willing to risk himself for others. The man who had died in an ambush Kane had survived. "You left me," the figure said, voice cold as stone. Kane's jaw clenched. "You're not real." The figure stepped closer. "You lived because I died. You saved strangers, but not me." Kane moved past him without another word, his boots squelching in the damp ground. The vines seemed to whisper as he walked, the voices blending with memories he thought he had buried long ago. Then came another shadow. This time it was his younger sister, her face pale, eyes filled with tears. He remembered the day he had left Earth for a mission, promising her he'd return. She had been only 10 years old. "You forgot about me," she whispered. Kane stopped. "No, I didn't." "Yes, you did. You chose the stars instead." He wanted to tell her it wasn't true that every decision he made out here was to make. Sure, she had a safe world to live in. But the vines were twisting tighter around him now, pressing close, their tips brushing his arms like fingers. The hum rose into a low roar, and the ground shifted beneath him. Suddenly, the mist ahead cleared, revealing a narrow path of glowing roots. Kane forced himself to move forward, ignoring the voices that followed him. Each step seemed to make the whispers louder, but he didn't stop. Then, from the corner of his eye, he saw Hertha, armored woman, walking within the vines, her figure moving alongside him. But something was different. She wasn't in armor anymore. Her skin glowed faintly, her hair drifting like silver smoke. "Cain," she said softly. Using his name for the first time, he slowed. "You're in here?" She shook her head. "Not me. Only what the vines want you to see." Her voice was almost gentle, and that made him more uneasy than her threats. She stepped closer, the green light wrapping around her form. "Do you trust me?" He stared at her. "Should I?" "That is for you to decide." Before he could answer, the vision shattered like glass. The vines tightened around him, pulling at his arms and legs. He fought them, pushing forward with all his strength, his boots sliding on the slick ground. Finally, he saw a thin slit of light ahead. With one last burst of effort, he tore himself free from the vines and stumbled into open air. He collapsed on the rocky ground, gasping for breath. The mist was gone, the hum fading into silence. The armored woman stood nearby, watching him with those sharp emerald eyes. She said nothing for a long time. Then, finally, "You faced yourself, and you did not run. Few can do that." Cain pushed himself to his feet. And the next trial. Her gaze lingered on him for a moment longer, and for the first time, Cain thought he saw something almost human in her eyes. "The next will decide everything," she said quietly. She turned and began walking toward the jagged mountains in the distance. Cain followed, knowing that whatever came next would be worse than anything he had faced so far. The mountains rose like the jagged teeth of some ancient beast, their sharp peaks cutting into the pale silver sky. Cain followed the armored woman through a narrow path between the cliffs. The air here was colder, sharper, and each breath felt like it scraped his lungs. They had been walking for hours, the silence between them heavy. Cain's legs ached, but he refused to show it. The first two trials had drained him, but he knew this last one would be worse. Finally, she stopped at the mouth of a wide canyon. The ground was scarred, as if something enormous had clawed at it. Bones long, twisted, and clearly not human were scattered everywhere at the far end of the canyon. A dark cave yawned open like the throat of a predator. From inside came a sound deep, guttural, and dangerous. She turned to him. "Your final trial waits inside. The beast within is older than I am, stronger than any I have fought alone. You will face it, and survive. Only then will your test be complete." Cain stared at the cave. "And if I fail?" Her voice was flat. "Then you are no different from the others who have died here." He scanned the canyon again. The size of the bones told him enough. This creature was massive. But there was something in her tone, something almost personal. "Why this trial?" "A fight?" he asked. She hesitated before answering. "Because battle strips away lies. In battle, you see the truth of a being." Cain didn't argue. He just stepped forward. The moment his boots crossed into the cave shadow, the air grew thick. With heat and the smell of damp stone, the sound came again closer now. A rumble like a storm trapped underground. Then the beast emerged. It was enormous, its head brushing the cave ceiling, its skin a mix of scales and armored plates. 4 burning yellow eyes locked on Cain, and rows of jagged teeth flashed in the dim light. Its claws dug into the rock with every step, sending small tremors through the ground. Cain pulled the weapon from his belt. It wasn't much, a compact plasma rifle, but it was all he had. The beast roared, the sound echoing through the cave like thunder. Cain dove to the side as its claws slammed into the ground where he had stood. Sparks flew from his rifle as he fired at its shoulder, but the shots only left smoking marks on its armor-like hide. He kept moving, circling, looking for weakness. The beast lunged again, forcing him to roll across the rocky floor. A sharp pain shot through his side, but he ignored it. Somewhere in the shadows, he saw Hertha, armored woman, watching silently. She wasn't helping. Not yet. The beast charged, its massive tail whipping through the air. Kane barely avoided the strike, but the tail slammed into the wall, shaking loose a shower of rocks. An idea sparked in his mind. He backed toward one of the jagged pillars of stone, firing shots to keep the beast's attention. When it lunged, he dove aside at the last second. The creature's head smashed into the pillar, cracking it. Kane fired at the damaged spot, and with a sharp crack, the stone collapsed. Slamming into the beast's side, it roared in pain, stumbling. That was the opening Kane needed. He leaped forward, jamming the rifle's barrel between the plates of its neck and firing until the weapon overheated. The beast gave one last, shuddering roar before collapsing with a heavy thud, dust rising around its massive body. Kane stepped back, breathing hard. His arms shook from exhaustion, but he was still standing. That's when he heard movement behind him. He turned just in time to see the armored woman striding forward, not toward the fallen beast, but toward him. In one smooth motion, she drew a long, curved blade and swung it toward his chest. Kane barely blocked the strike with the overheated rifle. "What the hell are you doing?" he shouted. "The beast was not your final trial," she said coldly. "I am." Before he could answer, she attacked again. Her speed was inhuman, her strikes precise and deadly. Kane dodged and blocked, but he could feel his strength fading. He had the chance to strike her when she stumbled slightly, but he didn't. Instead, he pushed her back with the rifle's butt and stepped away. "Why aren't you killing me?" she demanded. "Because I'm not here to kill you," Kane said, breathing hard. "If you wanted me dead, you could have done it in the first 5 minutes we met. This is your test, but I'm not going to fail it by becoming what you expect." For a moment, she was completely still. Then, slowly, she lowered her blade. The green glow in her eyes shifted. "Softer now. You are. Not like the others." She stepped closer, her voice quieter than he had ever heard it. "You've passed my test, human." Kane straightened, still cautious. And now, her gaze locked onto his. "Now, you will witness my true form." The canyon fell silent after her words. Kane stood still, the tension in his body refusing to ease. His breathing slowed, but his heart still pounded from the fight. The armored woman didn't move at first. She simply watched him, as if measuring every flicker of doubt in his eyes. Then, she stepped closer. The green glow in her eyes grew brighter, spilling faint light across the black plates of her armor. "You have earned what no other human has," she said softly. "The right to see me as I truly am." Kane's instinct told him to be ready for anything, but there was something different in her voice now. The cold edge he had heard before was gone. There was still strength, but it was quieter, like a sword sheathed, no longer raised against him. She reached up with both hands and pressed her palms against the sides of her helmet. With a faint hiss, the locks released, and she lifted it away. Kane expected scars or some monstrous alien visage. What he saw instead made him catch his breath. Her face was sharp and beautiful, but not human. Her skin had the faint shimmer of silver under the pale light. Thin markings like flowing script ran from her temples down to her jaw. Her eyes, now fully exposed, were not just green. They were deep, liquid pools, shifting like sunlight on water. "This is only the beginning," she said, her voice now warmer, almost melodic. She dropped the helmet onto the ground. The sound echoed against the canyon walls. Then, she began removing the rest of her armor, piece by piece. Each plate slid away, with a sound like metal sighing, revealing a body covered in a thin layer of what looked like luminous fabric. The moment the last piece of armor fell, The air itself seemed to change. A faint vibration passed through the ground beneath Kane's feet. Her hair, hidden before, was now free. It spilled down her back in strands of silver white. Moving as though stirred by a breeze he couldn't feel, Kane spoke without thinking. "You're glowing." She smiled faintly. "It is the outer layer shedding. You will see more soon." Light began to pour from her skin, not harsh, but soft and warm. The markings on her face and arms lit up in waves, pulsing like the rhythm of a slow heartbeat. Then came the sound, a deep hum, resonating in Kane's chest. He realized it wasn't coming from the air, but from her. Her form began to shift, subtly at first. The lines of her body seemed to stretch, her limbs becoming more graceful, her movements more fluid. The luminous fabric dissolved into streams of light, flowing away into the air. For a moment, Kane felt as if he were standing in the presence of something not just alien, but ancient, like she was a piece of the stars themselves, wearing a body only so she could walk among lesser beings. She stepped closer again, and Kane had to resist the urge to step back. Not because she frightened him, she didn't, but because the sheer energy radiating from her made the air feel thick, as though reality itself bent around her. "This is my true self," she said, her voice now carrying an echo, as if more than one voice spoke at once. "It is what I was before my people fell, what I must hide, 'cause those who see it often wish to take it." Kane studied her. "Then why show me?" She tilted her head, the light from her hair flowing like liquid silver. "Because you chose mercy when you could have chosen death. Because you saved life when you could have walked away. And because you refused to become what you thought I wanted you to be." Her words sank deep into him. He didn't reply right away. Instead, he glanced around the canyon, at the bones and the shadows, and wondered how many had failed her trials before him. "So, now what?" he asked finally. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she extended one glowing hand toward him. "Now, human, you choose. You may return to your kind, or you may walk a path with me that will never lead you back here again." Kane hesitated. Her eyes locked on his, and for the first time, he saw something beyond the warriors, something lonely. The hum in the air faded slightly, her light dimming as if she was giving him space to decide. Kane's voice was quiet, but steady. "If I go with you, what happens?" Her lips curved into the faintest smile. "Then you will see more than my form, human. You will see my world, and perhaps save it." They stood there in silence, the air between them heavy with the weight of her offer. Kane didn't know if this was the end of the test or the start of something far more dangerous. The canyon air was still, yet Kane felt as if the world itself was holding its breath. The glowing figure before him, the same armored warrior who had threatened to kill him only hours ago, was now something entirely different. Not just a fighter. Not just an alien. Something older, stranger, and far more dangerous. But also far more human than he had expected. Her hand remained extended toward him, the light in her skin pulsing softly, like a heartbeat. "If you come with me, human," she said, her voice carrying that strange layered echo, "you will walk in places your kind has never seen. You will face dangers your people cannot imagine, and you will no longer be part of their world." Kane looked down at her hand, then back into her eyes. There was no trick here, he realized. No threat. Only choice. "And if I say no?" he asked. Her expression shifted, the light in her hair dimming slightly. "Then I erase your path here. You return to your ship, to your life, and never remember my face or my voice. You will live, but you will not know what you lost." Kane thought about the two trials before this, the bridge over the chasm, the living vines that showed him his fears. He had felt like prey at first, but now, looking at her, he felt something else. Respect. A strange kind of trust. "Why me?" he asked finally. She didn't answer right away. Her gaze softened, and for the first time, she sounded almost vulnerable. "Because in a galaxy full of beings who take, you are one of the few who gives. Even when it costs you. That is, rare." The silence stretched. Kane's mind flashed with thoughts of home, his sister's smile, the sound of rain on his apartment roof back on Earth, the smell of strong coffee in the morning. If he took her hand, all of that might be gone forever. But there was something else inside him, something that had brought him to this unknown world in the first place, the need to know what lay beyond the horizon. He took a slow breath and stepped forward. His hand met hers. The moment their skin touched, a pulse of light shot through him, not painful, but overwhelming. The air seemed to shift around them, the canyon fading like mist. For a moment, Kane felt weightless. Images flashed in his mind, vast. Cities of glass and stone under alien suns, oceans with waves of liquid light. Forests of trees that sang when the wind passed through them. He saw battles fought in the silence of space, creatures of shapes he could barely comprehend, and a towering palace carved into the side of a black mountain, its walls glowing from within. Then the visions faded, and they stood once again in the canyon. Kane pulled back slightly, his voice low. "What was that? A glimpse?" she said. "Of what waits if you stay at my side." Her hand fell to her side, but she didn't step away. "You will be my voice when I cannot speak to your kind. My shield when I cannot fight alone, and I will be yours, human." Kane gave a half smile. "Sounds like you're asking for more than just company." Her own lips curved, though her eyes stayed serious. "I am asking for an ally, and, perhaps, in time, more than that." The words hung between them, heavier than any weapon. Kane didn't fully understand what she meant. But he didn't need to, not yet. A sharp wind swept through the canyon, and Kane realized the silver clouds above were moving faster now. Shadows stretched across the stone walls, and far in the distance, a low rumble rolled like distant thunder. Her gaze turned toward the horizon. The light in her skin dimmed slightly, as if a shadow had passed over it. "We must leave. The ones who hunt me will not wait much longer." Kane's muscles tensed. "Hunt you, who you will see," she interrupted. "But if they find us here, even your courage will not save you." Without waiting for an answer, she turned and began moving toward the canyon's far edge, her steps fast and purposeful. Kane followed, his mind racing. He had passed her trials, seen her true form, and agreed to follow her, yet he still didn't know what she truly wanted from him. When they reached the edge, she stopped and looked back at him. "From this point, there is no path back to your old life. Every step will take you further into mine." Kane nodded slowly. "Then, let's move." She gave a single, approving nod. And then, with a sudden burst of light, she leaped into the air, her body shimmering as small wings of pure energy unfolded from her back. Kane stood frozen for a heartbeat, staring. Then she looked over her shoulder, her voice sharp but not unkind. "Well, you coming, human?" With a grin he didn't realize he had, Kane ran forward. Dan jumped. The wind tore past Kane's face as he fell, then slowed. A sudden force caught him, lifting him gently instead of letting him crash. He realized it was her. The wings of pure energy on her back glowed brighter now, their light wrapping around him like invisible hands. They soared over the canyon, the jagged peaks shrinking below them. The pale silver sky stretched endlessly above, clouds breaking apart in their wake. Kane felt weightless, but also strangely aware of her strength. She carried him as if he weighed nothing at all. When they landed, it was on a plateau high above the world he had seen before. From here, the land rolled out in endless colors: emerald plains, rivers of glowing blue, and in the distance, a forest of black trees swaying though there was no wind. "This is where my people once walked," she said, her voice quieter now. "Where we built our cities, grew our knowledge, and guarded the gates between worlds." Kane stepped toward the edge, taking it all in. "Looks like paradise." Her eyes flickered. It was. Until they came, she didn't answer right away. Instead, she began walking toward the black forest, her movements fast and purposeful. Kane followed, noticing that she was scanning the horizon like a soldier in enemy territory. "They are not from here," she finally said. "Not from any world that should exist in this part of the galaxy. They were built for conquest." Day came for what my kind protected. "And what was that?" Kane asked. Her eyes met his for a moment. "A key to everything." The words sent a chill through him, though he didn't know why. "And now they're hunting you for it," she said. Simply, "They believe I have it. In truth, I am the key." Kane slowed his steps. I mean that my true form is not just for beauty or strength," she interrupted. "It can open doors others cannot even see. It can shape what lies beyond those doors. And in the wrong hands, it could unmake entire worlds." They entered the black forest, the strange trees rising high above them. Their bark was smooth as glass, reflecting faint images that didn't belong, visions of cities, storms, and faces Kane had never seen. It was like walking through 1,000 different realities at once. "This place hides us," she said, her voice almost a whisper now. "The forest bends light, sound, even thought. They will find it hard to track us here, but not impossible." Kane stayed close, feeling the air grow cooler. Every now and then, the reflections in the bark seemed to move on their own, following him. T didn't like it. Then, faintly, he heard it, low metallic clicks, like claws tapping against stone. It came from somewhere deeper in the forest. She froze, her eyes narrowing. "They are here." Kane gripped the plasma rifle at his side. "How many?" "Too many to fight head-on," she said. "We keep moving. If they catch us, you shoot to slow them, not to kill. Killing them will only bring more." They moved quickly, weaving between the tall black trunks. The clicking grew louder, joined by a strange, hollow hiss. Kane risked a glance behind him and froze. Taut figures emerged from the shadows. They were tall and insect-like, their bodies plated in black armor that looked fused to their flesh. Their eyes glowed with a dim red light, and each carried a weapon that seemed grown rather than built. Kane's grip tightened. "They don't look friendly." "They never are," she replied. One of the creatures let out a sharp, chittering cry, and the rest charged. Kane spun, firing his rifle. The plasma bolts hissed through the air, hitting one of the attackers and forcing it to stumble. It wasn't dead, but it slowed just enough for her to grab Kane's arm and pull him forward. They ran. The forest twisted around them, the reflections in the bark flashing images of the chase. Kane saw himself and her from strange angles, as if the trees were showing every possible outcome at once. A bolt of energy from one of the alien weapons zipped past Kane's head, burning into a tree and making it ripple like water. "Faster," she urged, her voice sharp now. Kane pushed himself harder, lungs burning. He could hear the hunters closing in, their claws striking the ground with terrifying awe. Speed. Then she stopped so suddenly, he almost crashed into her. Ahead, the trees opened into a clearing. In the center was a pool of still black water that reflected no light at all. "In," she ordered. Kane stared. "That's not water." "No, it's a passage. Trust me." The sound of the hunters crashing through the trees was almost on top of them. Kane didn't think. He just followed her as she stepped into the black surface and sank without a ripple. A heartbeat later, they were gone. Cold darkness swallowed Kane the moment he stepped into the black pool. It was not like sinking into water, it was like falling through nothing, yet somehow still moving. There was no air, no sound, only the faint pull of her hand gripping his, keeping him from being lost. Then, as suddenly as it began, light bloomed around them. They stood on a floating platform of pale stone, suspended in an endless sky of deep blue and gold. Far below, a massive city stretched across a continent-sized island. Its towers curved like the spines of living creatures. Rivers of glowing light ran through the streets, and bridges of pure energy connected spires that reached into the clouds. Kane turned slowly, trying to take it all in. "Where is this?" "The heart of my world," she said, her voice calmer now. "The place I swore to protect. Few have ever seen it. None of your kind. It was beautiful, but it wasn't untouched." In the far distance, Kane saw dark smoke curling into the sky. A section of the city looked scorched, its graceful towers shattered and blackened. She followed his gaze. "They have already reached the outer gates. Soon, they will find a way here." Kane's grip on the plasma rifle tightened. "Then why bring me here? If it's so dangerous because I cannot hold them back alone anymore," she interrupted. "And because your kind has something mine has forgotten." "What's that?" Kane asked. "The will to fight for more than just survival," she said softly. "The will to fight for someone else." Before he could answer, a deep vibration rolled through the platform. Above them, the sky rippled and tore. Shapes poured through the rift. The hunters, their insect-like bodies glinted in the golden light, their red eyes locking instantly on Kane and the woman. They carried no ships. Their bodies were the weapons, each limb sharp, each movement precise. "They found us," Kane said, as she replied, her voice steady. "And now, human, you will see why I chose you." Her body flared with light, the silver in her hair blazing into streaks of white fire. Energy poured from her hands, forming a shield that curved over the platform like a dome. The first wave of hunters slammed into it, their claws screeching against the barrier. "I can hold them," she said, "but not for long. There is a gate behind me. If you enter it, you can seal this rift forever, but you will never return to your world." Kane looked past her. Behind the platform, a tall archway shimmered with blue light, its frame carved with symbols he didn't recognize. It pulsed like a living thing, waiting for someone to step through. "And if I don't?" Kane asked, her gaze met his, unblinking. "Then I fight until I fall. And when I fall, this city falls with me." The hunters struck again, harder this time. Cracks spiderwebbed across the glowing barrier. Kane's pulse pounded in his ears. He could run through that gate, give up his old life forever, and save hers. Or he could refuse, keep his freedom, and watch her world burn. The choice wasn't hard. "I didn't pass your tests just to walk away," Kane said. He sprinted toward the gate. The moment his hand touched its glowing frame, a surge of energy ripped through him. The platform shook violently. Behind him, the hunters broke through the barrier. Rushing toward him, she moved like lightning, her form a streak of silver light as she cut them down with arcs of pure energy. "Go!" she shouted, her voice echoing across the endless sky. Kane stepped through. The world on the other side was blinding pure white, stretching in all directions. In the center stood a pedestal with a single glowing crystal. He didn't know what it was, but instinct told him what to do. He placed his hands on it. The crystal flared, and a beam of light shot upward, slamming into the rift above the city. The hunters shrieked, their bodies dissolving into ash as the tear in the sky sealed shut. When the light faded, Kane found himself back on the platform. The sky was whole again. The hunters were gone. She stood before him, her light dimmed, but her eyes steady. "You chose my world over yours," she said quietly. You chose me." Kane shrugged, though there was a faint smile on his lips. "Guess I'm not going back to Earth anytime soon." She stepped closer, her voice soft but strong. "No, but you will have a place here, at my side." He didn't know what the future would bring, war, peace, or something in between, but as they stood together on that platform, watching the city's lights return, he knew one thing for certain. He had passed every trial, and whatever came next, they would face it together.